Welcome to the Orange Hammer Podcast. My name is Corbett Storick. I've been a licensed general contractor for 8+ years, specializing in new construction, renovation, furniture building. I'm the son of an architect and an interior designer, and I've been surrounded in this industry since birth, watching all aspects from concept, design, build, punch list, and of course, all the problems that come up in between. In my time in Durham, North Carolina, I've noticed a significant gap in knowledge between homeowners who need work and the people who do the work. On this podcast, I hope to break down the process of homeownership from the perspective of both the homeowner and the contractor in an effort to help raise the knowledge of homeowners about their homes and the construction/renovation process. I hope you enjoy. If you're enjoying the Orange Hammer Podcast, or if you have a topic that you want covered, or have recently done a project, please contact the Orange Hammer Podcast. The Orange Hammer Podcast is on Instagram and Facebook. Please like and subscribe, share on whatever platform you're enjoying your podcast on. Also, check out our YouTube channel, The Orange Hammer. The Orange Hammer Podcast is proud to be brought to you by CRS Contracting LLC for all your construction and handyman needs, new buildings to renovations, furniture building, EV charger install, or even a TV mounted. You can call me, Corbett Storick. It'd be my pleasure to help you. You can find me on Instagram at CRS Contracting. WSDG, the Walter Storick Design Group, specialists in architectural and acoustical consulting. Check out WSDG.com. And Taylor Bragg, for all your artistic needs in all mediums. You can find her on Instagram at brag_about_art. That's brag, BRGG, with 2 G's. She's the fantastic artist behind the Orange Hammer logo, and she did my fantastic table painting of my podcasting table. The Orange Hammer Podcast is proud to be brought to you by Stacy Sloan with Keller Williams Elite Realty, proudly serving the Durham and Triangle area for 25 years. Call Stacy at 919-972-1180. The Orange Hammer Podcast is proud to be brought to you by Rachel Z with Rachel Z Real Estate Team Realty. From the Triangle to the Triad, call Rachel Z at 919-323-6068. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Orange Hammer Podcast. Today, I'm with David Mashian of Money Mac. So let's just jump right in. What is the origin of that last name?
My last name is Persian.
Persian.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I actually was fascinated when I was living in California. I was living in Santa Cruz, and I met a gentleman from Iraq. But he was very, very adamant that he was not from Iraq, that he was Persian.
Okay.
And I was like, at first, through ignorance, I was just confused because I was like, so I've seen like the movie 300, but like that was thousands of years ago. There are no more Persians. And he was like, no, it's a culture. We're still here. It's just called Iraq. And I was like, oh,
Iran. It's called Iran.
Iran. Excuse me. And I was just like, oh, well, thank you for the education. And basically, all I learned about Persian culture from this one man, Shab, was his love of tea. He would go to like bulk spice markets 45 minutes away in San Jose and get like, he would had like his own recipe, like, oh, go get 2 teaspoons of this tea and 5 teaspoons of that tea, and he'd put it all in a big thing and shake it up, and it was like his brand, his like kind of tea, and it's all he drank all day long, and it was delicious. But that's like my total education of Persian, other than like the movie 300, which is just like a dramatized war movie. Yeah. So, do you have a other than the name? Do you have Persian, like, cultural things that you've kept onto that have been passed on through your family or anything like that?
Nothing. Actually, my first name is actually Persian name is Kambiz. But I go by David. David's my middle name.
Okay, David's your middle name. Okay, see, I only know you as David, so I just assumed.
That's right. So that's a kind of, it's definitely something I'm holding on to. But, culturally, I'm very Americanized. I'm not Persian so much as the culture anymore. I love the food, but
Okay, well, let's talk about the food because, like, I don't know anything about. I was just in Egypt. That's probably the closest I'm gonna get, but I don't know anything about Persian cuisine and its, delicacies. So, what kind of world or what kind of spices are we in? Where do you get good Persian food, or do you have to cook it?
Well, if you're in Durham, there's a restaurant called Flame.
Flame, like a flame, like a fire.
Flame. That's like a fire. They have authentic Persian food.
Okay.
It's very good.
Can you give me examples of names of dishes that are like, that's a Persian dish?
Well, there's what Americans call shish kebab, which is like your basically beef kebab or chicken kebab.
Yeah.
Those are kind of the standards that everybody knows. But then there's a lot of rice dishes, which are like rice mixed with different vegetables. It could be with tomatoes or carrots or different herbs. Then there's the stews, similar to like Indian food where they have stews on top of rice.
Okay.
Well, they have like different kind of rice, whether it's with lentils or it could be eggplant or a mixture of vegetable stews that they put on top of rice as well. Usually with lamb, but in the United States is mostly with beef.
Right. I feel like lamb, just as in general in this country, is not as popular. Definitely not as popular as cow or beef.
Beef, that's right. So then they have like lamb shank and chicken, the chicken kebab, but then there's saffron chicken, roasted chicken, and it's a lot of different soups. It's actually very healthy food, a lot of vegetables in Persian food.
I mean, if you're not eating an American diet, everything's healthy. Yeah, the diet here is awful. And I've, believe it or not, on this podcast about construction and home ownership, we have talked at length about the standard American diet.
That's
and
right.
It is trash. It is absolute all garbage. It's like you slowly but not so slowly learn and then realize that it's basically just slow poison. Like, it's just like a very slow time-released poison.
Yeah, it's like, mostly really convenient food, like hamburgers, pizza, hot dogs, stuff like that.
But it's funny you say, like, at least the first, obviously, a hot dog, I can't really speak intelligently on everything in that, from the bun to the ketchup is processed. But, like, you can have very healthy pizza and very healthy hamburger if you had, organically, properly sourced flour, and it wasn't thrown with a bunch of preservatives, and your burger wasn't with a bun that was made that had too much sugar in it. Like, there was an article I saw where I believe it was Ireland. Now, if I'm screwing this up for listeners, I apologize. But Ireland, like, had to ban Burger King because their buns had enough sugar by the Ireland standards that they were considered pastries.
Okay.
The bun, bun of your hamburger that should not have sugar in it had enough sugar that it's a dessert in Ireland.
That's right.
So just think about that. Like, it's the most addictive substance we know of.
That's right.
And it's in the bun where you're like, oh, I'm just getting like, you think, oh, I'm getting, a burger. It's mostly protein or whatever. And it's just like, no, it's a Snickers.
Yeah. And also the ketchup is loaded with sugar.
Oh my God. It's just sugar. Ketchup's just sugar. But that's another example. Like, you could, if it wasn't, and I'm not even shitting on Heinz. I don't have a problem with them, like, as a company. But, like, if it wasn't the ultra-processed Heinz full of sugar and high fructose syrup ketchup, you could get, like, a homemade ketchup that's not just all sugar. And you could have, like, a hamburger as a concept is healthy. It's only when you, like, Americanize and ultra-process it that it becomes trash.
Yeah. Well... it just depends what the ingredients are, if it's healthy or not.
Yeah, absolutely. So are you born in the States, or are you born?
I was born in Iran. I came here when I was 6 years old.
6 years old.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So that's got to, obviously at 6, it's probably easier in that you're not paying attention to a lot of things. Like, I don't know, at 6 years old, I didn't know what currency differences were or taxes or whatever.
Yeah, you don't know.
But that's got to be an insane culture shock. Where did you move to in America at 6?
We moved to L.A.
Okay.
We started living in L.A. when we moved to the United States.
What part of L.A.?
Studio City.
Okay. Yep. Before I was born, my mom lived in Manhattan Beach, and would just have been back and forth to L.A. a lot, so I'm familiar.
I don't go anymore. I feel like culturally, I don't want anything to do.
LA
with
is very different. It's different than when it was.
It's
in the past.
completely changed.
It's
yeah,
gone a little crazy.
kind of California in general. There's been some. Well, I guess I should say metropolitan California has drastically changed.
That's right. The
like
cities,
the rural parts of California where like farmers are still just farming. Not a whole lot has changed, but city-wise, there has just been a crazy shift. And I honestly don't even have an opinion I feel like sharing about whether it's good or bad. It's just different, and it's very interesting to watch it all happen from 3,000 miles away.
Yeah, they're living in a bubble. They got their little isolated little echo chamber, and they're pretty unaware with what's going on outside, and they just think that what they're experiencing is normal.
Yeah,
and they don't want to rock the boat. And
no,
I know I have plenty of family in LA, and that's the way they are.
Yeah, and so does that create? Is there any like? I guess we'll use cultural now as the word. Is there any like cultural divide you have between your family who are still in LA, where you guys are just like, where whatever the topic may be, you're calling a family member out there and be like, your opinion is not correct. You just see it through an LA pair of glasses and not like a countrywide pair of glasses. And that just creates a topic you can't talk about.
Yeah, well, we don't really get into these kind of political stuff. At least I don't. They have their opinions. I mean, they know they're living the life they want to live. They know what I'm doing. I'm obviously not there. So, and they really have no real idea. When I moved out of LA originally, I went to Orange County in Newport Beach, and they had no idea what the heck Newport Beach was, even though they've been there for 20 plus years.
It's not that far away.
No, it's not. And before I left California, I invited them all down to Newport Beach to eat, and it's kind of a farewell thing. And they were like, "Wow, this exists." And I'm like, "Yeah, yes."
That would be like
and they had no idea.
That would be like living in Manhattan and not knowing the Bronx was there. It's like, wait a minute, you just missed that entire cultural section. Yeah, that's kind of.
They had no idea. I said, "Yeah, I've been living here. It's a great place, and and I'm moving on." But so it kind of like I said, in a bubble, very much so in a bubble. And
the term bubble, though, I feel like is applicable. Even I use that term all the time, bubble and echo chamber, with regards to social media, where it's like you cannot so hard. It doesn't take a lot of effort, and a lot of times people don't realize they're doing it, but you can kind of cultivate your social media to be the bubbling echo chamber that just fuels your own opinions, and you get you can very quickly just like, oh, I don't want to see that, or I don't want to be friends with that, or I don't want to follow that. And then all of a sudden you have nothing questioning your beliefs, nothing questioning your opinion, and nothing causing you to explore other opinions and other beliefs and at least educate yourself on why somebody might disagree with you. You just get to like live in that little bubble and close yourself off.
That's right.
And I think it's super dangerous.
Well, the whole system for social media is geared that way. They cater to what you want.
Yeah, but it's at, the other side of social media is what an amazing tool we have to connect with all these different people from all these different backgrounds. Like if it wasn't for social media and networking events, I would never be talking to a random money person who's also an investor, who's also a project manager, who's Persian. Like you got to look at the other side of that coin of like, we are from nowhere the same path. And here we are sharing opinions and views that might not align and being cool and calm and collected about it and exploring different avenues and understanding, I want to know about Persian spices, you might want to learn about Jewish food, whatever. Yeah. But like, here we are having that discussion. And if it wasn't for social media, we don't even know each other. But then on the other side, you can very quickly just be like, okay, I only want to hear the same 25 people that repeat what I say, and it makes my view that much more cemented, and it causes more divide. And we don't even have to apply this to politics. You could apply it to anything: politics, sports teams, type of car brand, food preference, city location. People still think Durham is unsafe from a reputation that's 20 years old. And it's, it's what they see on social media.
Yeah.
I played pickleball 2 weeks ago, and me and the guy who invited me are on one team, And this other couple are on another team. And at the end, they're like, oh, so you live in Cary too? I was like, no, I live in Durham. And their faces change. Like, I'm in danger. And I'm like, you live in Raleigh? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, you know, the crime rate's higher in Raleigh. Like, that's a legit statistic you can just look up on crime rates. Like, it's not like you just see Durham in the news more, but it's not like a reality. It's like I could only pick bad stories of any place you think is really great to live, and I could change your view real quick if you want. So I just think it's like there's an opportunity to use these amazing tools like social media for good. And it's so easy to use them for bad. Oh my God. And then you realize you're arguing with a Russian bot.
That's right.
That's the best. It's like so many bots.
That's right.
Yeah. So professionally in California, you were doing the same thing you're doing now, right?
Yeah. I was a commercial broker back in California, real estate broker. And about, I'd say 9 years ago, I went into hard money lending.
Okay.
So I've been doing hard money loans for about 9 years now.
Okay. So for those who are listening and don't know what a hard money lend or loan is, what's that in a minute?
It's basically a private loan. It could be from an individual, like a friend or a family or a stranger who's lending you money. Or it could be a more institutional loan from a company that is in the business of making these kind of loans that are not based on any kind of bank criteria. Hard money
when you say, quote, these kind of loans.
These loans are basically investment loans. They're geared for buying investment properties for fix and flip or rehab. It could be kind of a temporary loan to kind of settle some kind of financial challenges that people are having, whether they need to buy a property real quick. Maybe it's a good deal, or maybe they need to buy it because it's an opportunity that you can't wait for the lender to come in and step up. And so you're going to buy it and use hard money and then replace the hard money with traditional, let's say, bank financing.
So it's very much a short-term solution,
right.
Because otherwise you would just be destroyed on the fees and interest rates if you were using a hard money line or loan, whatever you want to call it, for a long-term like rehab.
That's right. It's meant to be a short-term.
It's like the gap financing.
Yeah. Gap is that's a technical word.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So let's explore that, because for listeners, I don't deal with this, after as a client, you figure this crap out and then you hire me and I just get the real money. Like I don't deal with that. I'm the person where it's like, you got your money figured out. I'm happy to build you a new kitchen. You know what I mean? So I'm not even like that educated myself. I know what a traditional mortgage is for buying a home you want to live in. And I also know what a construction loan that turns into a mortgage. But again, this is residential for the person living in it. This is not investor world.
That's right. The investor world is different.
So you're kind of, and definitely jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but if I understand what I think you just said, you're kind of like a broker where you've got so many different people, whether it's an institution, somebody who's got their own money, or anything in between, who wants to basically use this as a quick way to get a nice fat interest payment. And you're the intermediary from the person who has a property they can't really afford to buy, and they're looking for a large amount of quick money to either close the deal or do a 2-month rehab and get the thing sold and pay those people back before they get murdered on interest.
That's right. So hard money is basically, you can have a broker hard money, or you can be direct to the hard money. So you can actually go to the investor directly and borrow the hard money. Or if you don't have connections to that hard money, you can work with a broker or mortgage broker who can find you that money.
Okay. And that's you.
Yeah. That's right. I've done that. And I've also been direct as well. So I've done both.
So you have the funds to be an investor.
That's right.
Okay.
So you can do that. And
what's like an investment you could handle? I mean, I don't want like your personal financial bank account information.
Well, it's not so like an investor is like I would work in-house with an investment company, like with those big institutions, where I would be their representative. So it would be direct to me as their rep, It's not my
Oh,
money.
it's not your. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I misinterpreted. I thought you meant like you could do it. Like
Well, you
I
could
could
do
just
it too.
hire
Like,
David,
let's say
and
you
you got $1 million to
could
throw
do-
at me to buy a house and renovate it.
That's for sure. You can do that. That's actually how originally hard money was. People who had money, they were wealthy, they have money that's not doing anything, and they could get a higher yield by lending it out. So they would do that. During the last recession, when you had a lot of houses on the market that were foreclosed on, the birth of the hard money business really became more institutionalized by these big companies that are now doing hard money lending.
Are you referring to COVID as the recession or 09?
It was 09. I would say 2009, 2000. So
right. Obviously that happened. I just was not sure if you were referring to like 2 years ago when everything super changed.
Previous when it was the floodgates were open, where all these houses were, flooding the markets everywhere, where there's a lot of.
So a doctor who made a boatload of money and he's just sick of it making whatever low percentage in the stock market. He's like, you know what? I want to roll some dice and take some risk, and instead of letting the S&P 500 have it, I'm going to let, John Doe take it at a much higher interest rate. And so what guarantees, if anything, that protection?
So they would be typically in a first lien position. So if they were just like a bank, let's say you went and got a loan for your home from Wells Fargo or Bank of America, whatever, they would be in a first lien position, which means that if the borrower ever defaulted on the loan payments, they would foreclose, but they would have they would be the first in line to receive the proceeds from the sale of the property.
Okay. So no matter what, they're what, FICO basically.
Well, FICO is the credit score.
Or no, that's not the acronym I was looking for. First in, last out, whatever it's called. Or first in, first out, rather. Sorry.
Yeah, so it's kind of, and that's it's all recorded. So when you go, let's say you're going to buy a house, and you get let's say do a traditional loan, right? You're going to live in the house. Bob and Jane are going to buy this house.
Yeah, just like a regular 30-year mortgage.
That's right. So they go buy this house. And so Bank of America puts a lien on that house saying, okay, we lent Bob and Jane money to buy this house, and they're going to pay us interest and whatever it is. And let's say Bob and Jane also get a HELOC, home equity line of credit. The HELOC would actually be a second lien position, and that's by a different institutional lender typically.
Right. So Bank of America is going to get their pound of flesh first if the shit hits the fan and they have to sell this house at a loss.
That's right.
And hypothetically, that HELOC could get nothing back if something really went wrong and they had to sell it for an insane
that's
low
correct.
number or whatever.
That's correct. So you can go first, second, third, fourth. I mean, infinite, so long as the value is there and somebody's willing to lend the money.
Right. Yeah.
But basically, the start of the private money or hard money lending started with people just like, it was, let's say it could have been even friends and family that said, cousin said to one cousin, "Hell, I need money for this. Do you have the money?" He lent it. He put his, he got first lien position on the property. And if the property didn't get, if the loan didn't get paid back, they would get foreclosed on. And it's the same thing with any other lender. So it's it's a loan. I know it's called hard money, but it's hard money is the implied. What's implied with hard money is that it's fast, and there's a lot lower threshold in terms of due diligence on the lender. So they're not going to. I've seen hard money lenders not even check credit scores. Sometimes what's important to the hard money lender is not even credit score. It's the borrower's experience in, let's say, doing a fix and flip.
Right.
So they look at the borrower's experience, and maybe do they like the property? There's all kind. If the hard money lender says, you know what, I like that property. This guy knows what he's doing. Oh, great, let's do it. And and there's also hard money lenders that are not so oriented towards, they may do a loan to own where they know this loan's going to flop and they're going to foreclose and get the property and the down payment, down that the original borrower or buyer had. So they're basic. That's a strategy that's done, but it's typically not done. And maybe in the old days that's what it was done, but it's not so much anymore.
Okay.
Most of the time now, you'll see, I'd say easily 90% of the business is more institutional, because the small mom and pop hard money lenders do run out of money. It's not like they got endless amount of money.
Yeah, I mean, it's we're talking big numbers to have just chilling.
Yeah,
like it's a lot.
That's right.
It's like, oh, you know, if you've got $800,000 just chilling that you could just lend to somebody in a hard money situation, you probably could just retire.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a lot of cash to just be chilling around where you're even discussing lending it out in a hard money situation.
That's right.
As a one-to-one situation, it makes a lot more sense for an institution. So then gap financing, you said that's yet a different thing. So
yeah.
what's
So okay. So gap financing is basically like the down payment portion. So let's say it's kind of like it could be an equity position, it could be a debt position. But let's say I'm going to go buy this house, and I need 25% down, and I'm going to get a loan with Mr. Joe Schmo hard money lender. So, so I have a friend who has some money, and they're going to lend me the down payment, okay? And then I'm going to go borrow the money from a hard money lender, and I'm going to get the 75%, which is going to be a lien position, first lien position, and the gap financing falls behind it. So it's kind of like a second, but there's a lot of ways you can structure this, and I don't want to get into it. But basically, it's your down payment. It could be an equity position where the person giving that money participates in a yield on the money, as well as participating in the appreciation of the property when it sells or refinances.
Okay, so they get a tail at the end.
That's right. So they could, typically the gap would participate in the upside
of the set. Okay, right. Okay. So now, in your best opinion, okay, so I've got a client who will remain nameless. They had a huge issue with a house that they bought, and basically they had to, for all intents and purposes, they had to gut it down to the studs and redo all this leaking plumbing and replace all this moldy insulation and this, that, and the third. And they hit me up yesterday and said, we finally are ready to have you and your guys come in and do the sheetrock and the paint and the tile, but we're out of money because they are they're going to sue the state when this is done, because like all the problems they're fixing should have been caught by the various building inspections, and they were not. So when they hired me months ago, I was like, you need to sue Carrie. Like this is not acceptable. These inspectors need to be held accountable. Like a plumbing inspector should have not passed that plumbing. Like that's effed up. But that's neither here nor there. But basically, their next like massive chunk of money comes after their next appraisal, which will not come till the sheetrock is on the wall. So they hit me up and they were like, explained all this, and like, any chance you'd front the cost of the sheetrock and the tile labor? And I was like, absolutely not. Not at all prepared to do that. You got they're not friends or anything like that. So my only suggestion was you need a money guy to help you with getting from where you are right now to that appraisal. So given what I just said, are you that person?
I could do that. It depends how easily I can do that.
Pull that mic closer.
I could do that, but it also, the money is, money has cycles. Sometimes
obviously you could do it. I mean, like, not trying to get the job for your own personal like payment. What is your best suggestion in that situation?
So first, what kind of property is it? Is it a commercial building?
No, it's their home.
It's a house.
Yeah, it's a house.
Okay, so that makes it a lot easier because it sounded like a commercial building.
No. It's their like 3-story home in Cary.
Okay, so they bought a house, they stripped it down, and now it's called a broken project. The technical word. Okay,
it is very broken. And like I'm just the contractor where they're like, we like your sheetrock bid. And I'm like, cool, I need a check for half up front, and I need a check the minute we're done, and they can't give that to me.
So are they are they going to live in the house?
Yeah.
Okay, so that kind of makes it a little bit more challenging because
of course.
So hard money.
Yeah, because if they were just an investor, then
if it's
that would
investor,
probably
I
be very
could-
easy.
Easy. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. So if
But
they're-
no, it's their house, and they are against my direction. They are also the air quote GC on their own house, because you can do that when it's your own house.
yeah. So that goes out of my scope of specialization. So because since they're owning the house and they're going to live there, that puts them under a consumer loan category. It's not a business purpose. It's not an investment loan.
Okay, so that's just a side of loans you're not involved in.
Nothing.
Okay.
I don't do that. That's covered by Dodd-Frank. There's a big separation between consumer loans, which is, like I said, Bob and Jane, they want to buy a house and they want to live in it. They're buying that loan because they're consumers of that loan, because they're a consumer of that product, the house.
Okay.
So they're living in the house. But an investor is not a consumer. They're investing in that house.
So let's
It's a
pretend.
business purpose.
Let's pretend that. Let's pretend this whole predicament is mine and I'm the investor. What would you tell me then?
Okay, if it's your deal and you're an investor,
I own this house
you
and
wanna- sure.
I've 200 grand's coming in an appraisal and I need X amount of money to get me a month till I can get to that appraisal.
Okay, so first
Yeah.
what we do is if it's an investor, it's a broken. I've funded these things before. So basically, we want to get a scope of work of what you've done already on the property, and then
Right.
we don't want to get a scope of work of what you plan to do and how much it costs.
Right.
And then we'd want to get
Which in this case we have. It's actually pretty clear.
okay, and then we'd want to see what's the after repair value. What's this property going to be worth after all this work is, all this money spent. So if the costs justify the end value of the property, then we would lend maybe the whole amount. But if it's not, then we would kind of either decline the loan or have to revise that budget to make it fit in line to what.
Right. So you would either come in and be like, okay, you need 200,000 to get you to finish this $800,000 project, and you're going to sell it for $1 million. That's good. Or you need 200,000 to finish what will be an $800,000 project, and it's only going to sell for $750,000. You need to cut and do shittier appliances and find a way to make it fit if you want to use us, or you need a different loan officer.
Yeah, I mean, so it may, depending on the situation.
So it has to work for you guys as well. You need to
absolutely,
because if you're just loaning to, like, I don't know the correct term, but if you're loaning to people you know are losers and their project is a losing project, there's too much at risk.
They're not going to lend to losers, at least not knowing going into it.
Yeah.
This is a business venture. It's not a charity. It's, we're going there to make money off the money. That's the whole point of the loan. It's an interest plus fees and all that stuff. So if somebody has the track record that proves that they understand what they're doing and the project pencils out, then they'll make the loan. But if it doesn't, they just move on to the next deal.
Gotcha. Okay, so who are you supplying money from?
Okay, so like I said, the private money typically, the old-fashioned days is people had their own money.
No. You today now.
Okay, so the
primarily.
Okay, so the big institutions are the one that do private money lending, and what they do is they're pretty much sales arms for the big investors that buy into this. So there's kind of tiered into different. It's a structural. So let's say one company goes out there and finds hard money loans. They underwrite the deal. They fund the deal from our credit line. Then they take all these loans and pool them into, let's say, 100 million tranche. Right, they take let's say this bundle of loans that they made, $100 million, then they go resell that to the investors in Wall Street or big bond investors or big insurance companies.
You lost me so long ago, and you've only done 3 steps. All I heard was some crooked shit happened, and some crooked shit got bundled up, and then we handled it to Wall Street crooks that sold it to somebody.
So okay,
this
so
is
let's
garbage.
say
this is not real.
Let's say so that's how the money is. So let's say the big companies want to see high, let's say a big company like a PIMCO wants to see, they invest in bonds and loans.
So if I'm getting a loan from you, who's giving it to me?
Okay, so initially the company that is
what's
lending,
the company? Who is it?
It's a hard money lender.
Right, you said that 3 times. Who is it? Give me a name.
It's them.
Who's them?
It could be any company. It could be a Zinc. It could be a Civic. It could be a Velocity. It could be Silver Hill. It could be a lot of different companies.
So far, 0 for 4 on knowing these names.
Okay,
these are banks.
They're not banks. These
like
are
who is Velocity?
These are lenders.
That's
They're
all
lenders.
they do. They're
That's
just
all they
lenders.
do. There's no tellers. There's no checking accounts. There's no nothing. These are lenders. So what they do is they make the loan. They take the money out of their own credit line that they have to make the loan. When they make, let's say, 100 loans, they take this 100 loans, they bundle it up, and they have already a dedicated group of investors that are big institutional investors that will come and buy these loans.
Okay.
And so these investors will buy the loan, keep it in their portfolio. These investors could be money management companies, it could be insurance companies, it could be bond investment companies. And these companies are like, they have big other big institutions, like let's say these companies that have pensions for schools or teachers or whatever they have. These pensions want to put their money somewhere that they're getting a yield. So these companies are in charge of investing that pension money. And so they may buy these hard money loans and they'll get the higher yield from the hard money loans. So they're basically funding the hard money.
God, this seems like if we just removed every part of the system you're talking about, we would just have like no more crooks and we would just be doing real stuff in society instead of pushing around money.
Well, it's all paper.
Sorry to insult your entire career, but I'm like, so far you're just pushing money around that's not really real money, and it's like one company's getting debt and buying, and I'm like, but nobody built anything.
Yeah, it's all paper. It's all paper, and it's all a system of agreements, basically. Yeah.
So how does you, all the way at the bottom, get a relationship with Velocity?
If I know them, or let's say Zinc or whoever else the lender is, you just kind of form a relationship with them, understand how they lend, what are their parameters.
So how does somebody who's listening to this go from no longer working at Burger King to being a hard money lender?
Well, they basically have to go out there and find customers. If they get the customers that wants to borrow, they would have to just kind of learn the ropes of what does that lender want. They say, okay, we want a lender who's got the experience or kind of properties that fit in this kind of price range, not too small, not too big, whatever it is. And then they would source that borrower. And if the borrower qualifies, they get the loan.
Okay. So why would somebody do this with you versus, I don't know, the 25 other hard money lenders I've met in the last 6 months?
I think it's ultimately down to relationships.
Okay. So you're selling your personality because the job is like being a realtor.
I guess so. No, it's not really. Work. I mean, it could be personality, but it really comes down to an ability to close the loan. I mean, sure. I mean, these companies are not secrets.
No, I'm curious because, like, for me, I constantly am never stopping the answering of the question, how do I differentiate myself from every other contractor? We're a dime a dozen, and we all buy the same 2x4s, and we all frame houses by the same code. So it's like a similar thing. I've had so many realtors on here, and I always ask them, I'm like, well, why would somebody call you versus the 20 other realtors I've had on here? So it's the same question for you lend money, and there's a million of you guys, and it's not a unique, by your own admission, it's not a unique skill set. You know the people who have it, and you just have to hunt for deals like our investor does, or a contractor does, or a real estate agent does. So it's like, once you found the deal, like what skill set and relationship do you have that the other guys don't have? Or is it just a sales job where it's like your personality and relationship is the reason somebody would use you to find the money?
Well, I mean, ultimately it does come down to a relationship and personality, and it is a sales job. But I think a lot of it comes down to somebody's ability to actually close the deal.
And what do you expand on that?
Well, you got to have the experience and understanding of the loan, what it takes to make that loan happen. Sometimes, there's plenty of loans I don't want to work on because I know they won't work. So I don't waste my time on that.
And you can just tell by like the initial numbers where you're like, there's just not enough money to be made, or it's just like,
and that's
just
kind
too
of
tight of a margin.
Yeah, or whatever it is. I mean, it basically, I mean, that's kind of a protection for the borrower as well, but also it kind of saves me time. So that, so that's kind of learned through just
it's
by
like
experience.
me doing bids. There are some bids where I'm like, this one we're probably going to get. Let's be a little bit more detailed. And then there's other bids where it's like, this person's not going to hire me. They just wanted to get a number. So like, I'll just throw something together a little bit quicker. That's a little bit sloppier. And then you don't even get a text back. And it's like, yep, that's what I figured was going to happen.
Yeah, it could be that. But why would they hire you? I mean, it's a lot of times it is a sales job at the end of the day. So, I mean, that's a lot of it is about marketing and kind of customer service. So who's going to do that? I mean, I've worked with hundreds, if not thousands of realtors in my life. And, a lot of times it's the difference between somebody called you back and somebody didn't. Somebody responded to your email.
You primarily working with realtors?
No.
No. Okay. What would you say is like your primary, other than the word investor, but that's just such a big umbrella. What would be your like target demographic?
Well, it's primarily it could be directly to investors or it could be mortgage brokers.
Okay.
Mortgage brokers and not your residential mortgage brokers. So
you're not doing residential. It sounds like
so it's a different world. So
it's just
So if somebody says I want a hard money loan and they go to Mary who does only home loans, they're going to be out of luck. And Mary's going to not have a clue, and maybe she'll do a little work and trying to dig up somebody, but she's probably going to run into a lot of walls and lead them down a lot of dead ends.
If Mary was smart and experienced, she would say, I'm not the right person for that.
That's right.
You need to call David.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And somebody who is like myself, that's all I do. If you said, I want a home loan because I want to live in it, I'd say I'm not the right guy.
Right. Do you have the Rolodex of people that you would send to, or are you just like, I can't help you?
I try to help if I can't do it.
Yeah.
I would give them a referral if I can.
I mean, I'd imagine you have an amazing, well, now it's just an iPhone, but I'm sure you have an amazing Rolodex because your networking event is incredible. Yeah. Shout out to the deal exchange. I was going to say hot deals. I was like, that's not what it is, but it's something like that. Yeah, the deal exchange. I only made the one, but I was so happy to get the call where you were like, it was like standing room only, the second one. We're out of space. We're moving locations. I was like, that's the point, man. This is what we're looking for. And I'm happy to be your only contractor who shows up.
That's right.
Hey, I'm all for it. Though that one dude who said he needed a flooring guy, he dropped the ball in every way. He was like, the house is vacant. Go measure it. We get there. There's somebody living there. He was like, I'll meet you there. He didn't show up. My partner will meet you there. As we arrived, his partner left. I was like, what is going on? And then I texted him the number and I just got no reply. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, you're not real. And
welcome to the world.
This is why I charge $100 for a visit. And he did not get charged $100, and damn straight he'll get charged $100 the next time.
That's right.
I drove 45 minutes to Raleigh to get stood up and get no phone call back.
That's right.
So
they gotta have skin.
Not cool. Yeah. Not cool at all. But, I only met him that one time, but now I know.
There you go.
Yeah. So we also, when we met at the, what was it called? The Mastermind event, where it was such a waste of time. I don't remember what we did. Oh yeah. Somebody talked about like 25 AI different things for stuff everybody already had, like how to do a business logo. I was like, we all have logos, but thanks. You had mentioned that you were also a project manager for renovation and construction builds.
Yeah. I'm working on 2 house builds right now.
Nice. So these are renovations or new construction?
Ground up. Brand new.
Okay. And so how'd you get into that?
I wanted to get into it. Contacted some GCs and just talked and got it.
So with no building experience and no license, people are trusting you to project manage ground up construction. There's got to be more to the story, man.
Well, I have some rehab experience, But really, ultimately, a project manager comes down to kind of being responsible. I mean, I hate to simplify it. You got to just be aware and care. You got to kind of be there, see what's going on, and kind of use your common sense for a lot of things, which for me is kind of common sense. And like,
yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I would also want my construction GC to know how to tile correctly. So like,
that's right. Yeah.
So like, I wouldn't hire you because you don't.
I'm not doing the labor. I'm not.
No, I know, but
labor.
but like my PM needs to look at the tile being done wrong and be able to stop the guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
Why I'm my own PM. So I was just like, it's very interesting how there's no like, oh, my dad was a GC and I was a GC.
Well, there's all kinds of levels of. I mean, I put a lot of communication in my project management. So I take pictures. I communicate with both the GC as well as the owner of the property who hired us on. So everything is fully transparent and fully communicated.
So are you hired on as a third party, or do you work with the certain GCs?
I work with a GC.
Okay.
Kind of like the boots on the ground for the GC.
Oh, okay. So you're what GC?
What do you mean?
Like who is he?
He's just an individual general contractor.
Oh, you can't say him online. Okay. He probably does good work. We shout out positive on this side. We keep the negatives to ourselves. So are you like a contractor? Are you a W-2? Like,
I'm an independent contractor for that.
Okay, so you're an independent contractor, but he has built in your cost to his construction cost.
That's right.
Okay. And so are you how do you deal with it with your GC? Is it like you get me X amount of hours a day, or I'll be there 3 days a week, or a project is?
I mean, even different
X
phases
amount?
of the project have different costs, and I get a portion of that. Whatever he's getting paid, I get a portion of that.
Oh, okay. So you're like, it's like percentage.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Okay. And wow. Okay. Interesting. That's such an interesting concept, not from a construction background.
Yeah, and well, construction is not all that hard. You don't need to be too. I mean, not to belittle construction. I mean, I can see when something is wrong. I've done plenty of remodels to see some kinds of. Sometimes it's just obvious as God can be, but nobody says a word. So sometimes it's just a matter of the guy saying something about something that's obviously wrong.
Yeah.
And certain things. I'm not a plumber. I'm not an electrician. But, I can tell if something is not looking right, or if somebody's kind of cutting corners. It's just somebody being eyes on the project, making sure this guy's showing up, he's doing the right work.
And your GC just has too many jobs going at once to be that person.
Yeah, I don't know exactly whatever his reasoning is for why he's doing this. But you have to have somebody watching. Well, and verifying everything is being done, and I go to the sites multiple times a day, and I make sure everything is being done, and being done timely. And there's inspectors that are professional inspectors that inspect different aspects of the project, and they're the ones that are kind of ultimately given the check mark on the work that's being done.
And the amount of times they're wrong is, well, probably not surprising to you, but definitely surprising to listeners. It's pathetic.
Well, yeah, you know what? We're all make mistakes. There's probably a lot of errors there, but it's what it is. You got to go forward.
I don't know what municipalities mostly you're working in, but in Durham specifically, they can't keep an inspector for more than like 10 months. So it's like every job you get a new dude, and he's like trying to strut his big ball sack around and like give everybody a hard time for like one little gray comment on the code book. And it's like, dude, we get that you're new, but nobody cares. Like, you're not special. Just like read the code book and pass it or fail it. And it's just like, it's hysterical when you get these new dudes who are like, I've seen it happen 3 times, all with plumbing. It's always plumbing. I don't know why, but it's always plumbing. There's always this like dick measuring contest between the plumber and the plumbing inspector. And I don't get it, because like the electricians never have this problem. HVAC never has this problem.
Is this on new construction you're talking about, or rehab?
I mean, I'm mostly doing rehabs, but when you gut a house as far as we do, it's basically new construction, because like the utility wise, they're basically new because like we're gutting a house to nothing, but then like the one bathroom is being moved and we're adding a new bathroom. So basically we're just cutting it at the where it comes into the crawl space and everything is new. So it's basically new construction as far as how it's operating.
So maybe it's the plumber. Sometimes it's just personalities.
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it's the plumber because he's a dick.
Okay, well, is it the same plumber you're having that problem with?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah,
there you go.
there
That's
you go.
what's causing the issues.
Honestly, he's been fired already, and I have a new plumber. But it is just funny to see, like, he is, I don't work with him anymore. He was definitely a dick, but he would show me the code book, and I'd be like, I hate to even say it, but like that is not very specific. Even the way it's written, there's like some gray area in the plumbing code that is very interesting. Whereas the electrical code doesn't seem to have any gray area. It's like, this needs X wire, X breaker, get it done, move on. And plumbing has a lot of gray area for some reason. I'm not a plumber.
Well, it seems like more like the plumber is kind of locking horns with the inspector. Which
Probably.
he probably shouldn't be doing.
Yeah. It's funny. I normally deal with his partner, and he's like so easy and chill. And then the other guy, he has the problems with the inspections all the time. And I'm like, oh well, maybe he's just a jerk.
It's a battle of the egos.
It's a battle
of
the egos.
Yeah,
you would think the guy from California would be more chill, but no.
So there you go. So that's kind of where the GC can step in and say, hey, you know what? Why don't you kind of just stay quiet while the inspection's happening?
Yeah, just
nod your head and smile. Don't say a word.
Yep, and then they argue with his boss. So you're doing 2 new constructions at the same time, you said?
They're going on one at a time.
So they'll be back to back.
Yeah.
Okay. Are they on city or septic and well?
It's on city utilities.
That's easy, or easier, I should say.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, new construction ground up are you there beginning to end?
Yeah.
Okay. And are you at all involved? Or you're just boots on the ground and quality control? You're not like designing or
I'm not designing
inputting,
anything.
No, okay.
It's all quality control, boots on the ground, making sure everything's moving on timely and the money, checking what's being spent.
Okay. Nice. And are you primarily dealing, if you're with the same GC, you're primarily dealing with the same subs?
Yeah.
And that's got to just get easier and easier.
Yeah, and the subs know. The subs already have a lot of experience with the GC, so there's a lot of good synergy and symbiotic relationships going on there. So it's there's a good flow.
Yeah,
it's not like I have to figure things out too much. Everybody's kind of moving along the right way.
Yeah, it's true that like the team aspect is so vital, especially when you're a GC, as you start to work with the same crews of each trade over and over and over, and you start to, like, even just being able to recognize, like, oh, okay, this one guy, he's going to drop the ball a little bit there, but then the trade who comes in after already knows that they need to, like, bring extra caulk or, whatever the thing is. Like, it's just having that same crew that know each other just makes it run so much smoother.
Yeah.
The first house I ever did at 22 with no license took like a year and a half, and then the same crew and I did the next house in a year, and then the next house took 8 months, and it's just like I started to learn, like, oh, this guy's gonna not do that, so the next guy's got to do it, and you start to just like learn that pretty quickly. Also, that first house, I had no subs. I had to like realize I needed a trade and be like, oh, to Google and call 4 people. And now it's just like, I've got the floor guy. He's in my phone as floor guy. So back to the Rolodex,
That's right. And it takes a lot of lumps to figure out who's going to be the one that works on the deal.
Yeah, it does. Unfortunately, in the beginning, I went through HVAC companies like I don't know what the example is, but so fast, because they would just not show, too busy, would finally get them, and they would do a terrible job, and just like.
And you got to be on top of them too. It's like I've seen them do things that are not up to spec.
Yeah, and if you're me at 22, I don't know what spec is. So I just watched them do something wrong and didn't correct them because I had no clue.
No, and they're counting on you not knowing,
Yeah.
and you got to go back and say, hey, you didn't do that. Come on back and fix this.
Yeah, and then they want to upcharge you.
Well, they can't. You
So
just say, you fix that.
So I got a great one for you. Okay, so this HVAC company, both bath fans, they had them dumping into the attic instead of out of the house. So for those listening, you can already put the pieces together because you do this every day. But for those listening, the bath fan is supposed to suck up the moist air from your shower and shoot it outside your home. If you just shoot it into the attic, then that means air full of moisture is just floating into your attic, and then moisture is heavier than the air, i.e. raindrops, and it's just going to settle right back down around the fan and on the roof, or the ceiling rather, of your bathroom. So fast forward 2 tenants and 4 years later, the underside of the bathroom drywall was just black as dark death with mold.
Yeah, that's the black mold.
It wasn't even black mold. It just looked like black, and it happened to be mold. It wasn't the black mold that everybody's super afraid of. But I still had to completely gut a brand new bathroom. All the sheetrock had to be ripped out. I'm screaming at my plumber because that much mold has to be a legit plumbing water leak. They come and look at everything. They go, everything's tight, dry. What are you talking about? And then upon ripping the ceiling down, we see the pipe just terminated. It should have gone through the roof, and they just never did it. So I got to get now 4 years later, new HVAC company. They're like, we didn't do this. I'm like, I know you didn't do this. Fix it though. So they got to cut like 5 little holes in the ceiling because the attic access is too small for a human.
Yeah.
and they it's like and then I got to get it all patched, and then I got to put this whole bathroom back together. It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
And the only person to blame is me, because you can blame the HVAC people, but in reality, they're just corner cutting, malicious assholes. They saw a newbie and went, screw him. And I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And 5 years later, I can't go back after them. So I just had to like eat it and redo it. Yeah. And lesson learned. And like, I don't have these problems with Maynor. Shout out to Maynor HVAC. They're incredible. David Clark, who's been on the podcast, he's the man. He would never let that happen. But damn straight, I'm there to make sure. I'm like, oh, where are we terminating? Where are you going out the soffit? Like, I want to know exactly where it's ending. I want to know where that duct is in case I've got to clean it.
Yeah.
I'm just paying attention to these details, not because I was lazy in the beginning, just because I didn't know that they mattered. I just assumed when you hire a licensed, reputable person who's pulling a permit that they're going to do it correctly. That's not enough anymore. Like you said, you got to be there.
No, you got to watch it.
You got to watch it.
You can't, you can't really walk away because they'll screw it up in the time period you walk away.
Yeah. So now I want to ask you something very important. How do you personally draw the line of doing your job and not being a micromanaging asshole? Because my parents, for example, do not know how to separate those two. So much to the fact that I refused to be their GC for their current Durham house. I was like, I'll pull your permit, but then you got to hire this other guy, and here's all my subs, and have fun. Because they do not have the ability to pull back. They literally want to micromanage like the way the electrician is wiring breakers. And they don't know. They're not electricians. So that's an example of really terrible micromanagement that is pissing off all of my subs. And I'm getting the feedback from all of my subs. And they're just getting smiles because they're writing checks. So how do you personally make sure that you're doing the job you are paid for and keeping everybody on, but not just like over a guy's shoulder for fucking 5 hours straight?
Well, I mean, sometimes, I guess, I don't know what to call it, micromanagement. I found out that, if you see something wrong, you got to say it.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you hired them on, you hired them to do the job. Like, let's say an electrician. I'm not an electrician. If the guy's doing something, I'm going to assume that it's correct, and he's got a license on the line that's saying that it's being done correct. So I would see him do the work. He's not doing anything that I'm kind of feeling off about. Then I would let it be. But I would make sure he knows I'm watching and I'm aware of but I wouldn't be sitting there commenting everything. So that's how I would do it. If I see something, it's usually the help that doesn't. You could tell they're hiring these people that are not like plumbers and electricians, or HVAC. I'd say these guys are usually pretty well qualified. I mean, this is a really
it's because they have to have their own license.
That's
so
right.
There's a level of qualification.
That's right. I would
Whereas
say,
like the framer is just.
Well, even the framing, I mean, at a certain point, you got to understand how much experience this guy has. Is he cutting corners? If something looks off, you got to be there and make sure. And you got to ask questions. I ask questions. I don't manage. I say, how about this? What is this? Why'd you do that? How come this is this way? What do you think? And sometimes they don't even realize it. Or maybe they realize, hey, you caught them. So they go back and fix it.
So it's almost like not that you're being sneaky, but it's almost like a trick. It's like you asking a question because you kind of know the answer and you want to judge what you know to be correct.
Yeah, it's like a little, it's
get.
more diplomatic way.
It's like a quiz, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
Because it's like if you go in, it's like I'm going to ask this dude a question about why he framed it this way because I know the correct answer and I can compare his answer. And if he gives me the correct one, I'm be like, nice job. If he gives me the incorrect one, it can be like, actually, we want the correct amount of nails or whatever.
Yeah,
the heck
and
you
so
didn't do.
I've had a plumber go on, and he said he's going to put a certain type of copper piping, and when he came to the site, he didn't have that copper piping. I said, how come you don't bring the right one? And he's like pretending like he doesn't know what he's talking about. He forgot. I'm like, well, go back and get the right copper pipe. So it's just a matter of just watching what's being done and, putting to me, it boggles the mind how they would cut corners for like pennies. That's just like ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't get the mindset. I really don't. I think it's just, I don't know.
We share that 100%. And that's honestly, in a nutshell, what boils down to the reason I started this podcast was like, because you do this every day. I know. I literally have a license to do this. But the average John and Jane Doe homeowner have no idea what they're looking at.
You just got to watch it. You got to ask questions. And I like mostly where the micromanagement probably needs to be done as far as your parents are concerned are the finishes, like the painting, the molding, maybe the cabinet, making sure.
Do me a favor. Don't defend my parents right now. You have no idea. This project is insane. Every sub, the guy I told them to hire, they call me once a week and they're like, yo, man, what is up with them? And I'm like, this is why I'm not on the job. Like, hello, I get it. It's terrible. Get paid, move on. Like, get it done so we could stop dealing with them. Like, but anyway, you don't know. Yeah, we don't have to dive down that.
It's kind of like just making sure, hey, you know what? It's sloppy there. Hey, fix that. Or the tile is crooked. You got to pull that one out. That's kind of been.
Yeah.
It's just dumb stuff like that. What can I tell you? It's not like genius work.
I mean, you'd be shocked. Yeah. So are you going in at all with like, well, maybe the GC does it, or maybe he gave you the list, but do you have like the, I don't know your GC's name, John GC. Do you have the John GC list of like things you want to make sure are checked off, like when you go and do a framing inspection?
Yeah, I have a list of stuff.
Okay, yeah, because I've been kind of like creating this list. We've done 10 or 11 houses now, all in the Durham area, where we've like bought, a POS that borderline should have been bulldozed. And we've gutted it down to the studs and built it back to brand new, and now they're all rented out. So we have this stable of rental properties, but like the first one, we didn't do any tricks. And then the second one, mostly by listening to the comments of our tenants. Like the previous house, I'm the person they talk to when something breaks. You know, I'm the property manager. They send me the rent. Well, now rent's on auto pay, but they used to send me the rents and all this stuff. So they'd be like, you know, it would be really good. We noticed that like it would be really great if there was a third light switch for this particular light. And I'm like, okay, mental note. So then we go to house 2, and I'm like, okay, it's a little extra money, but let's make this one a triple switch, and let's, and then house 2, 2 years later, all of the curtain rods are loose. I'm like, okay, let's put blocking now when we're framing for all the curtain rods. And you just start adding that to the checklist. And then by house 4, every house now has a dedicated outlet high and in the middle of the house with a shelf for the internet.
Okay, interesting.
So just like little things where we're like, okay, who's renting this house? What are the real needs now? So like, all of us, people are like, why do you have this outlet at 7.5 feet up on a shelf that's 12 inches by 12 inches? And I'm like, well, if you look next to the outlet, you'll see a dedicated coax, so that all you got to do is plug in their router, dedicated, own breaker, no problem. We ran that to a box that's outside already. So Spectrum or AT&T just has to plug into that box, job done. It'll take everybody 11 seconds. Just making things easier, because, one property, we forgot to put in coax. So Spectrum gets there and they're like, what do you want me to do? You have no coax. All I can do is run it from the street to the house. And here's 100 feet of temporary wire. And I was like, cool. Well, for now, we're going to run it through a window. And then I had to get an electrician to like drill holes and run it through the floor and bring it up to a closet and all this crap. And I was like, well, we're never doing that again. And then the added money of shutoff valves for water.
Oh, yeah.
For tenants who are not allowed in my attic or my crawl space. I have locks and signs, and it's in the lease. But that's where the equipment is. So if there is an emergency and somebody is sitting on the sink and they bust it and the water's going everywhere, at least there's a shutoff valve that I tell them where it is. So I'm like, you just hit that. Everything will stop in 2 minutes. Get towels and text me. So at least you don't just flood your entire house, right? So it's like that shutoff valve is not required by code. You only need however many, and that's an extra one. But I tell my plumber, like, that's now a requirement. Just I want everywhere. Like that's
a great idea.
For the cost of that shutoff in the realm of what it could save, it's not even a factor. And same thing, bathroom hooks. It seems like a simple thing, but either putting in blocking ahead of time and using like deck screws, or immediately throwing away the drywall anchors that come with it and using my own that are rated for 100 pounds. That it's like you could do pull-ups off of this towel bar. So it's just,
that's right.
It's just the things that are going to get the most abuse.
Yeah, towel bars for sure. I mean, especially if you got kids. The kids play with those towel bars.
The toilet paper holder, I mean, that thing gets a lot of abuse, even if it's being used correctly. It just gets a lot of handling.
Yeah.
And it's just going to come loose, and it's going to come loose. Yeah. So you could use the shitty drywall anchor, and you get a year, or you could use the 175-pound test ones that I buy at Home Depot that are not even that expensive, and you're good to go.
Yeah, it's just a few pennies more. I'm like, it's all worth it.
Exactly. So it just goes back to your point of like the corners that are being cut. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense, and it's like you very quickly, when you cut corners, get the rep of being the corner cut guy.
Yeah, and contractors do get the rep of who they are,
Yeah, and contractors in general have a terrible reputation, just like on Earth.
For
like
sure.
Whether you're good or bad is almost irrelevant. Everybody assumes as a contractor that I'm a crook. And it's like, actually, I only take the jobs I'm interested in because I have multiple sources of revenue and I do this out of passion. But I can't convince you of that until you hire me and you're satisfied. So it's like, but then I don't know if you've ever come across this. Maybe your GC that you work for has had this happen to him, but I've gotten the opportunity to bid a job from somebody who got robbed by the contractor they used beforehand. And you could just tell by body language that I was the enemy.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, I've never even met you. You called me and I walk into a house that's like half the work is done and it's done wrong, and I got to tell this person like everything your person did, we have to gut and start over because this is not legal, and like your permit's not real, your framing's too wide, like whatever the reason, and you know it's gonna be X amount, and they're just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you about your previous issues other than I could give you a lawyer's phone number, because if somebody took 40 grand and did this, I would be going after them like they killed my dog.
Yeah.
Like I would be so furious. But you're the enemy. You're just the enemy. And it's like, wait a minute. You called me. I'm trying to sort you out. I've got a perfect track record. You can look up my license number, this, that, and the third. You know, no homeowners check their contractors. I don't know if you know this. Or
No, they don't
this.
check if they're insured. They don't check their licensing. They don't ask for references.
Nope. My license number is printed on my business card.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, nobody has just Googled it to see if I have open cases with the state of North Carolina.
Yeah.
No one's done it.
Yeah, that's a very good thing to talk about, because I asked when I was doing some home renovations, the contractor, the GC I worked with at that time, that was in California. Let's just say he wasn't very upfront and honest about a lot of things. He wasn't. I couldn't stand it anymore. I just kind of left. I couldn't stand working there.
You just couldn't take the
I thought it was a
lying.
lot of lying and
Yeah.
cheating going on. I'm like,
Yeah.
what are you guys doing? I was thinking I'm going to learn from you, but all I'm seeing is you guys are just doing
Some shady shit.
It's like, I'm out of here.
Yeah. I got brought onto this job. This guy, he gave this dude, I think there was 3 houses next to each other. He gave him $20K a house, so $60K. Gone. Poof, gone. The guy vanished. I find out after the fact, because I'm looking at the paperwork, he was being shown fake permits. He didn't even file real permits.
Wow.
Because the dude didn't have a license. He was shown a fake license number and a fake permit.
That's a first.
And I was like,
that.
I literally went up to the dude. I was like, I feel like I'm pouring salt in a wound. Did you not Google this guy's license number? He's like, no, I just assumed. I was like, dude, here's my card. Look up my license number. Like, look, at least see that it's a real, like, what? I was blown away. But you would not be shocked, but listeners would be shocked that like nobody does any due diligence, and it's so easy.
And you got to interview a lot of contractors for the same job.
You got at least 2.
I'd say, I would say at least 3, because each one's going to educate you, number one, about the job, and then you might be even educating them about the job, but also you're going to see who's kind of. I found out, I used to price out jobs for rehabs, and I learned it from that same shady character in California. I just learned a lot of these guys don't know what they're talking about. They shoot from the hip, and they shoot some crazy number based on what they feel about
the client.
The client.
Yeah, you go based on
I'm
the
like,
car in the
wait,
driveway.
You're not basing this on any real value or any kind of real anything. You're just kind of sizing up the client, and you're pitching a number.
Yeah.
I was shocked. My jaw hit the ground.
That's why it's crazy when you get you get 3 GCs who all bid the same bathroom remodel, and one wants 10 grand, one wants 12 grand, and then one wants 22 grand. And it's like, okay, that 10 and 12 guy, they probably did some math, and it's going to cost them 7 Gs. So one wants to make 3 and one wants to make 5. Okay, they're both basically the same. Yeah. That 22 guy saw you had a BMW in the garage and went, okay, 20 grand. And it's like, wait a minute, that guy didn't even call his plumber and get a number.
Yeah, they're just shooting from the hip, and it's just. So I don't know, whoever's listening, I'd say get multiple bids and kind of understand what your work is,
and also make sure that your multiple bids are bidding the same thing. And what I mean by that is like, okay, especially if you get 3 numbers back and they're all very different, call them all back and ask some clerical questions like, did you include tile or just labor? Did you include appliances? If so, what level? Because one guy might be like, well, we include a base model for appliances if you want the cheapest all white ones from Home Depot. And you might want chrome. You might want very expensive ones from the appliance center. So you could just tell that guy, okay, remove your appliance number so I know my kitchen will be done for this number and it's up to me to buy appliances. You know, those are legitimate. Nobody quoted that right or wrong. That's just different. You know, for example, for me, I'll never quote your tile. I'll quote you labor.
Yeah,
Go pick your tile. There's too many tile options. There's 99 cents a square foot and there's $8 a square foot. It would be impossible for me. So I'll be like, the labor is including the board, the waterproofing, the labor, the trash, everything. Yeah. And you need 721 square feet of tile and 35 feet of bullnose. Go pick whichever one you want. I actually don't care. Yeah. And when you tell me you've got the tile, my number is the same unless you're picking a mosaic like that. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then same with like, say you need your phone. Yeah. Yeah. And then, so it's just like, that's just like really sound advice that if you put both of our advices together, you'll be good. Get 3 numbers. I say at least 2. There's nothing wrong with getting a third, but then just make sure that, okay, they're all $3,000 apart from all of the rest of them. Why? Why are they all apart? At least make sure you're getting apples to apples. And
references.
Yeah.
And of course, do the Google check and check the contractor. So
if you're hiring a contractor and they don't have a license, don't hire that contractor.
And also ask them, hey, are you going to pull permits? I did that. I asked them, are you going to pull permits on this? And then I saw a big pause.
Yeah.
So that's telling me they're not. Now they're trying to clean up the act. It's, well, you know. That should not even be something that somebody pauses about. That's like, we're going to pull permits. That's how we're going to do it.
Yeah, or there should be a very fast no and an immediate reason why. Yeah. Like, I don't need a permit to just paint your bathroom, but we need a permit to redo your plumbing if we're gutting the tile. That's like, so, there are absolutely jobs that don't need a permit and absolutely jobs that do. And your licensed contractor should absolutely be able to tell you the difference between them. And also why. Yeah. And also be able to tell you that this job that doesn't require a permit could get a permit if you want to pay extra permit money and know it's going to take longer because this week job is now 3 weeks with inspections and permits. Yeah. As a homeowner, that just might make you sleep better at night. But don't assume that he's just like a crook because he doesn't want to get a permit to paint your house. You don't need a permit to paint your house.
Yeah, for painting is obvious. You don't need that. But
again, that's why getting 3 and just making sure that it's apples to apples.
Yeah, and make sure they're insured.
Oh, yeah.
And make sure that, they got the, what's it called, the workers' comp or compensation.
So workers' comp is actually, believe it or not required in North Carolina. You only need workers' comp when you have 3 or more employees. Okay. So me, who has 0 employees, I actually don't need workers' comp. Okay. So if you asked me for workers' comp and I didn't get it, and you didn't hire me because of that, that would be your mistake. Because all of my subs have their insurance as required by law, but I don't have to insure them. Yeah. They have their own insurance.
And one thing I did learn about working on stuff is like, if you get, and I've learned this by painfully through experience.
Good old trial and error.
Is if you hire somebody because they're cheap, it's going to cost you double.
Yeah. You get cheap money, cheap work.
Well, you get the cheap work. It turns out they screw up things. They break things. And then you got to fire them. And then you're going to go back and clean up their mess and pay again.
Yep. That's very true. Now, that does not mean always get the most expensive bid. That's not what David is saying. But this comes back to the importance and the validity of getting 3 bids and making sure that they are all the same bid. And if it were me and you got a $10,000 bid, an $11,000 bid, and a $12,000 bid, I'd probably go with that $11,000 guy. If they're all doing the exact same thing, I don't need the most expensive dude. I don't want the cheapest guy. Go with that dude in the middle.
Oh, yeah, who is the most competent? I'd say, you know what, I'll pay an extra $1,000. I just know you're going to show up and you're going to do the work on time because that $1,000 difference. It's huge. If the guy's dragging it out at 2 months, I'm like, oh my God, you're killing me here.
Yeah. I'll give a great example. So For one house, I had a fight with my sheetrocker, who's also my painter, who's also my roofer. So I didn't use him. And he like threatened to never work with me again. And then he realized he was being silly, and we work together now and everything's fine. But if I could go back in time, I would yell at myself, because what I did was I hired a separate sheetrocker and a separate painter, because together I was going to save $1,500 instead of just using my guy who does it all at once, and I would have paid $1,500 more. I tell you right now, David, $1,500 of headaches. I had $3,000 worth of headaches dealing with these two MFs who would not take responsibility for the mistakes of each other. Painter would be like, no, the sheetrocker screwed that up. Sheetrocker, no, the painter can fix that, blah, 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 blah. Whereas, and the amount of times I went to the site and it wasn't correct and had to, that, and the third. Whereas if I had just given Felix his extra $1,500, I would have never thought about it.
If it's within the same kind of frame of work, scope of work, just do it. I mean, but if you're telling the sheetrocker to do electrical work, your brain's not.
Then I'm an idiot. Then that's on me. But this is I'm just giving a great example where it was like I went with the budget, 100% the budget. Somebody convinced me my guy was too high. They gave me a different person. At the end of the day, on paper, we saved $1,500. But at the end of the day, I had way more headaches, way more time spent on the job where I'm not hourly. Yeah. And it cost me way more than $1,500 worth of headaches. This way,
in the business of rehabbing properties for resale, you're paying interest.
Right. So we're not even paying interest. So all that time kind of was borderline free.
Let's say your interest is $3,000 a month and you lose a month. You could have paid $3,000. Let's just say even if you paid $3,000 extra to the contractor to get it done timely, instead saving that $3,000 in interest would have been well worth it because you got the product out.
Yeah. See, that's a whole nother level. That I don't even have to factor in. That's huge. $3,000 a month in interest. That's not even the whole payment. That's just the interest.
Just a monthly payment. Yeah. So I'd say, the speed and competence really makes a difference.
100%. Yeah. You got to roll?
Yeah, I got to
We can end this. It's no big deal. We're on our own schedule. So anybody who needs you, what's the best way to reach out?
Call me. 310-903-6907.
And just a reminder, this is not really residential. This is commercial and investor style stuff, but you could still send them in the direction of somebody.
Yeah, give me a call.
Awesome. And as always, the Orange Hammer podcast is on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Corb at WSTG.com, and 845-489-6057 if you need some work or want to come on the show or want me to just talk about something specific. David, man, I appreciate you coming by.
Thanks, Corbett.
Have a good one, everybody. Bye.